Look at the Kalahari sand. It is an ocean of dust, cracked earth, and bleached bone. For months, the relentless African sun has scorched this landscape, turning it into an anvil of heat, where only the most resilient and desperate creatures endure. There is no sound here but the dry, brittle rustle of dead grass and the hollow, scorching wind that carries the scent of dust and memory. It is an unforgiving, suffocating silence, a land locked in a chokehold of drought, but a whisper is coming. 1,000 miles away, in the distant cloud-wreathed highlands of Angola, torrential rains have fallen. A single drop of moisture begins an epic journey, gathering into a trickle, joining a stream, and swelling into a mighty, unstoppable surge. This is a flood unlike any other on Earth. It does not rush toward the open ocean to be swallowed by the salt. Instead, it spills directly into the heart of the desert, creating a biological miracle that defies all geographical logic. Welcome to the Okavango Delta. It is an endorheic basin, a massive terminal sink, where a river meets an endless ocean of sand and miraculously blossoms into a sprawling jewel of life. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the golden, suffocating dust turns to deep, dark mud. The parched roots of ancient wild date palms and baobabs drink in the cool, life-giving embrace. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The dry heat gives way to a thick, humid air, heavy with the intoxicating scent of wet earth and blooming water lilies. The deafening silence is suddenly broken. The heavy, resonant splash of displacing water echoes across the plains. The tall, elegant papyrus reeds begin to sway and rustle as the current pushes through them. High above, cutting through the heavy air, the haunting, melancholic cry of the African fish eagle signals the arrival of the lifeblood. The transformation is absolute and breathtaking. A barren wasteland is overwritten by a shimmering, intricate labyrinth of deep lagoons, hidden, winding channels, and emerald green islands. But make no mistake, this paradise is deeply deceptive. Water brings life, yes. It acts as a beacon, summoning millions of creatures from across the punishing dry plains. Vast herds of elephants march along ancient, inherited pathways, their immense gray bulks breaking the surface of the rising waters. Thousands of red leechway antelopes bound effortlessly through the shallows, their splayed hooves perfectly adapted to the treacherous, muddy terrain. Endless columns of thirsty zebras arrive, their striped coats creating a dizzying optical illusion in the shimmering heat haze as they search desperately for fresh green shoots. Yet, in the Okavango, water is a double-edged sword. Where there is a concentration of thirst, there is an assembly of shadows. The floodwaters bring an unnatural, chaotic concentration of life. Millions of animals are suddenly forced from the expansive plains onto rapidly shrinking islands and narrow, treacherous land bridges. The sweeping desert has been transformed into a confined, inescapable arena, a watery Colosseum where every mouthful of fresh grass and every desperate drink could very well be your last. When the desert morphs into a flooded wonderland, who truly rules this constantly shifting terrain? Look closer at the edge of the dense papyrus thickets. The water appears perfectly still, acting as a mirror to the vast, bruised African sky. But beneath the delicate floating lily pads, death is waiting with cold, ancient patience. This is a realm governed by silent ambushes, calculated waiting games, and sudden, brutal explosions of power. The Okavango does not just test a creature's endurance against the scorching heat of the sun. It fundamentally tests an animal's ability to navigate the terrifying, unseen depths. The predictable rules of the dry savanna no longer apply in this saturated world. To survive the oasis, you must either master the water or outsmart the predators who use it as a weapon. And waiting in those dark, tannin-stained currents are apex killers who have perfected the art of aquatic warfare for millions of years. As the floodwaters reach their absolute peak, dry land becomes the most premium, violently contested commodity in Africa. Every single step taken by a nervous, thirsty herd is meticulously measured against the terrible, paralyzing risk of what lies unseen beneath the ripples. The air is thick with a primal, suffocating tension. A twitch of an ear, a sudden splash, a flock of birds taking flight in a panic. Every sense is heightened to the absolute breaking point. The Okavango is not a peaceful Eden. It is a beautiful, flawlessly disguised, and incredibly deadly trap. The prey animals know this truth instinctively. You can see it in the wide, white-rimmed eyes of a zebra foal, hesitating at the water's edge. You can hear it in the low, nervous grunts of the impala bachelor herds, their muscles coiled like springs, ready to launch at the first sign of a disturbance. They must drink. They must cross the deep channels to reach the fertile grazing grounds on the islands. Hunger pushes them forward, but terror holds them back. This is the agonizing daily reality of the Delta, a perpetual tightrope walk between starvation and slaughter. The beautiful water lilies hide armor-plated jaws. The thick reeds conceal muscular shadows. The very water that saves them from the drought is the medium that could seal their doom. The stage is set. The actors are trapped in the flood. The greatest survival drama on Earth is about to unfold. The water has now fully claimed the land. The sprawling, dusty plains of yesterday are gone, replaced by a vast, interconnected network of treacherous, shimmering lagoons. Islands of high ground are shrinking by the hour, creating a terrifying pressure cooker of biological survival. For most feline predators across the African continent, deep, flowing water is an absolute fundamental nightmare. A typical savanna lion's natural instinct is to fiercely avoid these murky, unpredictable channels at all costs. But the Okavango Delta does not tolerate the ordinary or the inflexible. Enter the formidable swamp kings. These are a highly specialized, localized pride of apex predators that have completely broken the traditional rules of their own species. Generations of surviving in this flooded labyrinth have fundamentally altered their physical biology and hunting psychology. Look closely at the immense rippling muscles across their broad chests and powerful shoulders. They are built not just for explosive, short-distance sprinting, but for the grueling, exhausting task of swimming through thick, resistant currents and dense, tangled reed beds. Water drips heavily from their massive, scarred jaws as they wade effortlessly waist-deep through the dark marsh. They do not hesitate or pace nervously at the water's edge. They plunge directly into the cold, tannin-stained channels, their piercing amber eyes locked fiercely onto the distant islands where the panicked prey has desperately gathered. To a trapped, exhausted buffalo calf or an isolated impala, the silent sight of a massive, wet lion swimming purposefully toward them is the ultimate harbinger of doom. But the lions do not hold a complete monopoly on fear in this shifting, watery realm. While the big cats mercilessly rule the shrinking islands and the muddy shallows, the deep, dark crossings belong to an entirely different, ancient nightmare: the Nile crocodile. They are the invisible, armor-plated lords of the Okavango swamp. Millions of years of relentless evolutionary refinement have perfected them into the ultimate cold-blooded, opportunistic killing machines. They do not waste vital energy chasing fast prey across the plains. They simply wait with a terrifying, infinite patience, suspended silently beneath the beautiful, delicate floating water lilies. Their rough, scaled backs are virtually indistinguishable from a rotting, submerged log. Only their cold, unblinking reptilian eyes and the tiny, dark slits of their nostrils break the mirror-like surface of the stagnant lagoon. When a thirsty, desperate herd of migrating zebras is finally forced to cross a deep channel to reach fresh grazing land, the water instantly transforms into a boiling cauldron of terror. The crocodiles strike from the dark depths with a sudden, explosive violence that completely defies their massive, heavy, cumbersome bodies. Prehistoric jaws, capable of snapping a grown man's femur like a dry, brittle twig, clamp down with inescapable, crushing force. A chaotic, heart-stopping frenzy of thrashing striped hooves, desperate, gasping splashing, and clouded, blood-stained muddy water immediately ensues. In the Okavango, a crocodile kill is brutal, remarkably swift, and absolutely final. Yet not all predators in this dynamic ecosystem rely on brute strength and silent, submerged ambushes. On the fragmented, shifting fringes of the Delta, a hyperactive pack of African wild dogs is facing an unprecedented tactical crisis. On the dry, open savanna, these beautifully painted wolves are the undisputed, relentless marathon runners of the wild. They boast an astonishing 80% hunting success rate, relying heavily on limitless stamina, incredible speed, and flawless telepathic pack coordination. But the relentless floodwaters have completely shattered their natural preferred battlefield. The deep, sticky mud severely slows their rapid, sweeping pursuits. The endless labyrinth of deep waterways constantly fragments their tight, disciplined pack formations. They simply cannot outrun their nimble prey through neck-deep, dragging water. So, their brilliant, highly social minds must rapidly adapt their strategies to the shifting, treacherous terrain. Instead of a relentless, exhausting straight-line chase, they initiate a deadly, highly coordinated game of chess. They intelligently use the narrow, treacherous land bridges and thick vegetation to corral and trap panicked antelopes against the deep, crocodile-infested rivers. The wild dogs force their terrified prey into an impossible, horrifying dilemma. Turn back and face the relentless, snapping jaws of the pursuing pack, or plunge blindly into the dark, churning water and risk the silent, ancient traps lurking just below the surface. This is the cruel, unforgiving genius of the deadly Eden. The terrain itself is effectively weaponized by those predators who know exactly how to manipulate it. But the remarkable prey species of the Okavango are not merely helpless, tragic victims waiting passively for the inevitable slaughter. They, too, have been perfectly molded by this extreme, demanding environment over countless generations. Witness the elegant, seemingly effortless bounding flight of the magnificent red lechwe. Unlike the heavy, sinking, cumbersome hooves of a massive buffalo, or the slender, fragile, easily broken legs of an impala, the lechwe is flawlessly designed for swamp survival. Their specialized hooves are remarkably elongated and splayed wide apart at the base. They act exactly like natural, biological snowshoes, allowing the agile antelope to sprint gracefully across the treacherous, sucking mud with breathtaking speed and sure-footed balance. When a stealthy leopard suddenly breaks from the dense cover of the tall papyrus reeds, the lechwe do not foolishly run toward the dangerous, open, dry land. They instantly launch themselves into the deepest, most difficult water they can find. They actively use the very obstacle that hinders and slows the feline predator as their ultimate, impenetrable shield. It is a magnificent, splashing, triumphant display of evolutionary defiance. Every single day in the flooded Okavango Delta is a high-stakes, life-or-death masterclass in rapid adaptation. The rising waters force every single living creature to constantly calculate the profound, terrifying risk of every movement. The dry land is a heavily patrolled hunting ground. The deep water is a concealed trap. And the fragile, invisible boundary between life and death here is thinner than a single blade of swaying marsh grass. The Okavango is a master of illusions. Just as the intense, suffocating heat of the day reaches its absolute zenith, the horizon turns a bruised, furious purple. A massive, towering anvil cloud suddenly swallows the relentless sun. The golden, shimmering light is instantly replaced by a cold, heavy, oppressive gloom. The wind picks up carrying the sharp metallic scent of ozone and the damp, earthy promise of a torrential downpour. In the wild, a sudden change in the weather is never just a passing inconvenience. It is a tactical advantage. A loud, bone-rattling crack of thunder rolls across the flooded plains. This is the exact signal the swamp lions have been patiently waiting for. Deep in the dense, swaying papyrus reeds, the pride begins to fan out into a flawless, deadly crescent formation. Their target is not a fragile, easily panicked impala. It is a formidable, dark, heavily armored mass of muscle and sweeping horns. A mega herd of several hundred Cape buffalo has inadvertently cornered itself on a narrow, deeply flooded peninsula. The buffaloes are heavy, aggressive, and notoriously short-tempered. They are the ultimate heavyweight fighters of the African savanna. But here, in the deep, sucking mud, their massive weight becomes a fatal disadvantage. The torrential rain suddenly drops like a heavy, blinding curtain. The deafening noise of the downpour completely masks the stealthy, splashing approach of the apex predators. The lions use the chaotic, blinding storm as their ultimate cloak of invisibility. Suddenly, an explosive, terrifying roar shatters the stormy soundscape. The ambush is triggered. The buffalo herd erupts into a blind, chaotic, splashing stampede. Thousands of heavy hooves churn the shallow lagoon into a thick, black, violently boiling soup. But the lions do not blindly charge into the deadly, crushing center of the panicked herd. They are highly intelligent, calculating tacticians. They deliberately force the herd deeper into the thick, treacherous mud, waiting patiently for a single fatal mistake. A massive, older bull loses his footing in the slippery, hidden underwater roots. He stumbles, splashing heavily, instantly separating himself from the protective, impenetrable wall of the herd. In a heartbeat, 3 heavily muscled lionesses launch themselves through the deep water. This is not an elegant, swift, sweeping savanna chase. This is a brutal, agonizing, muddy clash of absolute titans. The bull violently swings his massive, lethal horns, fully capable of effortlessly gutting a lioness with a single upward thrust. The predators must navigate the deep, dragging water while simultaneously dodging the deadly, sweeping blows of a desperate, furious giant. It is a horrifying, high-stakes gamble, where one single slip in the mud means instant, agonizing death for the hunter. But the swamp lions are the undisputed, perfectly adapted masters of this watery arena. Using their incredibly powerful upper bodies, They finally drag the exhausted, struggling behemoth down into the dark, suffocating marsh. The epic, violent struggle slowly subsides. The heavy rain begins to ease, leaving behind a cold, chilling silence. The storm clouds finally break, allowing the warm, golden hour light to dramatically pierce through the misty, dripping atmosphere. The Okavango Delta returns to a state of breathtaking, tranquil beauty. To the untrained eye, the scene of the muddy hunt is a brutal, heartless tragedy. But this is the fundamental, unsentimental truth of the deadly Eden. The predator is not a malicious villain. The swamp lions, the crocodiles, and the wild dogs are the crucial, irreplaceable architects of this entire complex ecosystem. By ruthlessly taking the old, the weak, and the careless, they prevent the massive herds from completely destroying the fragile, limited vegetation of the islands. They ensure that the remaining buffaloes are the strongest, the sharpest, and the most fiercely resilient. This violent, muddy culling is the ultimate necessary price of paradise. It is the only way the delicate balance of life can be perfectly maintained. In a few short months, the blistering, relentless Kalahari sun will return. The glorious, life-giving floodwaters will slowly evaporate, turning the deep lagoons back into an ocean of dry, cracked dust. The grand, beautiful oasis will completely vanish like a spectacular, fleeting mirage. But the brutal, magnificent cycle is eternal. The survivors will remember the lessons of the deep water, waiting patiently for the distant rains to return and summon them back to the arena. This is the raw, unfiltered, unforgiving heartbeat of our natural world. Thank you for joining this incredible journey into the wild. Don't forget to subscribe to Last Wild and leave a comment below to continue exploring the most untamed, spectacular corners of our planet.